Red State Talk Radio. Talk radio the way the Founding Fathers would have done it.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000, my heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
All right, folks, it is just a couple minutes past the hour right here in beautiful downtown Oklahoma City. This is America Off the Rails. I'm your host, Rick Robinson. We have Stephen Schwertley with us. Going to be here for the whole hour. Going to give the usual shout-outs to the affiliates here real quick, then take a break, then we'll be right back with the show. Of course, we are available on our home network. That is the SparkRadioNetwork.com. Of course, we're also available on K98 Talk in 3 different varieties, K98Talk.com, K98Talk.org, and, of course, the TuneIn app, AM/FM 24/7. Then we also have Stitcher, I already mentioned TuneIn, so iHeartRadio, and then, of course, we have SHR Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, and Red State Talk Radio. At this point, folks, we're going to go ahead and take a really quick break. We will be back with the start of the show here in just a minute.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Joe.
Hey folks, Slickery Trigger here. I'd like to take a minute to tell you about Rebel Road Tactical. As a defensive pistol instructor, I've had the opportunity to observe many different holster designs and configurations. And one thing is clear. Many of my students won't carry a pistol. Or worse, they'll carry one without a holster at all. Holster designers aren't making holsters for normal people. It seems that most holsters are either an expensive piece of gear designed for Rambo or a piece that doesn't fit or function the way real people need it to fit and function. So, like any good Texan, I decided to learn to form codex and design one myself, one that would fit the needs of average people. The result is the Rebel Road Tactical CRT Modular. The CRT stands for Carry, Range, and Training. Its thin and lightweight curved design minimizes printing and is adjustable to fit just right for superior comfort and function. Check us out after the show at rebelroadconcealed.blogspot.com.
We will keep this promise to the American people. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your health care plan, you will be able to keep your health care plan, period.
This is the most transparent administration in history. Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you got a business, you didn't build that.
Oh, welcome to the face. Welcome to the face of the new democracy. Don't expect us to make a mistake. We're paying off election debts to those on the take. Attorney General's lying even while
it's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. You're listening to America Off the Rails with your host, Rick Robinson.
All right, folks, welcome back. And, of course, it is Thursday, September the 10th, 2015, just a couple minutes past the hour right here in Oklahoma City. Again, as promised, we do have Stephen Schwertley with us. He is the author of Enemy in the Heartland. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fine out here in the desert. A little warm, though.
Isn't it pretty much always warm out in the desert, except for usually when the sun goes down?
Oh, I'll tell you what, it's 104 right now on a beautiful cloudy afternoon.
So whereabouts in the desert are you?
I live up in a town called Cave Creek, Arizona, which is one of the northern suburbs of Phoenix, Arizona, which, if you know where the airport is, downtown Phoenix, I'm about 20 miles north of the airport.
Yeah, I'm actually fairly familiar with that airport. I actually used to work for an airline, so used to go in and out of there quite a bit back in the day. Actually, we have a host that is not too far from your area. Jared Day is actually taking a bit of a hiatus. He actually is now part of the Kelly Ward campaign, so he's become one of her assistant social media directors. So he's still producing, but not really actively hosting. Not sure if you're that familiar with her campaign out that way, but there are a lot of folks that seem like they're kind of excited about her. And I haven't had a chance to talk to her yet, but I have talked to Darla Daywald a couple of times, and she seems like she's pretty fired up about the whole thing out that way. So,
well, I'll tell you what, the next big election is going to be very interesting for everybody. So I hope people will get out and vote.
I sure hope so, too, because it seems like the last couple of election cycles, we've just kind of had this complete apathy. And that's what I think concerns me a little more than anything else, is the fact that it just seems like we've gotten to the point where nobody's really paying attention anymore, much less actively engaging. But we may get to that a little bit later. Of course, I did want to start out with the opening of the show, giving folks a little bit of a chance to maybe get to know you, find out more about what makes you tick as an author, what gave you the idea for the book, all that fun stuff. So why don't you go ahead and just kind of jump off in whichever direction you want to go, sir.
All right, Rick. Well, I had a stroke back 2 years ago, July 7th, 2013, and been in really good health before, and I'm recovering ever since. But 4 months after I had the stroke, in November of 2013, I got laid off from my job as a regional sales manager for a company back east. And so at that time, being 63 years of age, there wasn't too many opportunities back in the corporate world, especially with a stroke. So my wife, who's a behavioral analyst, she said, why don't you start writing those books that you have in your head? You got plenty of time to do it now. So I sat down and went into my office upstairs in my two-story house and went into my office, of which I now call the cage. And I started to write the book, and it took me 4 months to write the book, and it's titled Enemy in the Heartland, which you can buy on Amazon.com, either printed book or ebook, or off my website, StephenSchwertleyAuthor.com. But I wrote the book, but then it took me 9 months to get it to the marketplace. But since it's now in circulation, it's been getting nothing but 5-star reviews, and it's a thriller. And it's funny, a lot of people will ask me, is it fiction? Or, and I go, I hope so, because it's about a drone attack against the United States. And they do not attack New York City or L.A. They attack where you least expect it.
Yeah, I have to admit, I was a little surprised. I mean, we're going to save that part. We don't want to give away too much. But you did, of course, send me a copy of the book before we did the interview, and I have to admit it was a page turner. I was not able to put it down. I actually read it pretty avidly all the way through within. I mean, well, I do have a day job, so technically I did have to put it down. But there for like 3 days running, if I wasn't at work and I wasn't prepping for a show, I had your book in my hand. And I'm actually now rereading it for the 3rd time.
Oh, wow. Well, do me a favor when you get a chance one day. I know you're really busy, but go on Amazon and write a review for me, because that's what I'm working for now, is to get more and more reviews, because as the reviews start piling up, I get noticed more and more so around the nation. So if you do that for me, I appreciate it. But it's a funny thing about reviews. When you go onto Amazon and look at the book, Enemy in the Heartland, most of the reviews are done by women. I'd say about 70% of them. And I never, ever thought they would read the book. So I don't know if that means women read more than guys do now, or they just got hooked by the book more so than guys did. But, I never thought that the suburban soccer mom would be one of the top buyers of the book.
It does seem like it's, if that's the case, because honestly I hadn't looked at the Amazon profile, but if that's the case, it does seem like it doesn't really fit with who your target demographic, at least in your head, was at the time that you published the book. So that is a bit of an interesting turnabout. It wouldn't necessarily surprise me, though. I mean, because I know, especially nowadays, it seems like most of the women that I talk to are the ones that do a lot more reading than the men do nowadays. I happen to be an oddity. I still enjoy reading. I actually read pretty much any chance I can, and my wife is the exact opposite. She gets onto me all the time because we're in the middle of packing up to move, and she just spent yesterday boxing up all of my books, and she kept asking me over and over and over again, when are we going to get rid of these? The day you bury me was my answer. I'm sorry. To me,
well, I just recently lowered the price of the ebook. Because the Christmas shopping frenzy is starting. If you've gone to Kmart or Costco, you'll notice that Christmas decorations are up already. So the other day I lowered the price of the ebook down to $2.99. The printed copies $18.99. But if you're an unlimited member of Amazon, you can download it for free. So it's amazing the turnaround over the years now. How many books are ebooks sold versus printed books. It's turned the print industry upside down.
Yeah, I have the ebook subscription. I don't know. To me, there's just nothing better than actually physically holding the book in your hand. And maybe it's just because I'm a nerd. I always have been. I mean, come on. I do a political talk show for God's sakes. But the smell of the pages. Especially when a book's been around for a little bit and the paper has taken on that scent that you get when it hasn't been opened in a while. There's nothing that beats the physical holding of a book in your hand. And I have read ebooks. I have folks that will send me copies of their books all the time as the ebook because it's cheaper than them shipping me the actual book itself. And I will read them. And there are times when I'm like reading it on my phone or something. I'm like, hey, this is kind of cool. And I'm just like, yeah, but it's just, I don't know. Something when I feel this pang of sadness when it's time to turn the page because it's just not the same thing. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Well, it's kind of crazy down here in the Phoenix marketplace. I've gotten a hold of a couple of best-selling authors as mentors nowadays to help me through the system because I just finished the second book, which should be published in this October, and I've started the third book. But according to my friends, like 7 years ago, there used to be 55 bookstores in the Phoenix metropolitan area. And you know how many bookstores there are now presently in Phoenix?
Not off the top of my head, but if I had to take a stab at it, probably about 5.
15, but still, that's a dramatic, closure rate for bookstores. So, I would say Amazon probably sells about 85% of all the books in the world right now, which is a staggering number. But, but the nice thing is the books are selling on Amazon, and I took the thesis of the book off the headlines that were being showed on TV back, a couple of years ago, and everybody was, getting crazy about all these drones flying around, and they still are. Like one just landed in the U.S. Open Stadium in New York last week during a play at late at night one night. But, people are very familiar with drones, so I started that as a platform for the book. And so I threw in a little bit of intrigue by using that old saying, 6 degrees of separation. Somebody knows somebody somewhere. So I figured I'll do that to generate a list of characters in the book. So you'll go around the world looking at, with the book in your mind, seeing different parts of the country and overseas. And then the other thing I put into the book is a twist of fate. If you would have gone left, what would have happened if you would have gone right? It's those little twists, and those are the things that make life unpredictable. But the biggest thing I wanted to come out so people understand is, it's the local people, you and me. When you see terrorism, call it in, because we're really the front wave against terrorists. It's not the police, it's not the CIA, the NSA, or any of these organizations. Somebody's got to tell them, hey, there's something going on. They'll respond. But we're kind of like the first line of home defense anymore.
Yeah, and honestly, I completely agree. But I think at some point along the way, a lot of the population has kind of forgotten that. And you kind of see that just from their attitudes. Like the whole, why do I need a gun when I've got the police? I'm sorry, but that, to me, that's the same logic of why do I need a fire extinguisher in my house because I've got the fire department. I mean,
yeah.
That argument doesn't make any sense to me. And the fact that we have so many people now that, and it's happening everywhere. It's not just in this instance with us being the front line against a possible enemy attack. It's happening everywhere. Everybody basically in this country, for the most part, and I mean everybody as a group, not any single individual, a lot of us have abdicated a lot of our responsibilities when it comes to, being vigilant and making sure that the world around us is the way that it needs to be, and making sure that we're doing what we need to do when it comes to how our government operates. Because everybody forgets we technically are supposed to be the government. It's not these guys in D.C. We're supposed to be the bosses, and it's the symptom of the same problem. We've just gotten to the point where we think the government needs to take care of itself, and that it's not our problem. And that's kind of the same thing that we're running into now with the terrorism and the attacks and everything else that's going on. I mean, because let's face it, if you look right now in the news, a lot of the things that are happening right now could actually be termed terrorist attacks, just on a smaller scale. And we're all just looking around going, well, when is somebody going to do something about that? Last time I checked, we are somebody, and it's about time one of us did something, but what do I know?
Well, if people like suspense, this book starts out a little slow because there is a pretty good-sized cast that I use in this book. But in real life, it's usually not one or two people that, plan a large-scale attack. It takes a multitude of people and resources. And so that's how I got the book going. 13 years ago, there was a bunch of kids who went to college that were from the Middle East. They went to a university in England, and they became friends there. And then, the party one night decided, hey, let's do an attack against the United States because, we lost all our relatives during all these wars in the Middle East. And as time went on, these kids graduated. A couple of them were from rich families in Europe who financed these wars in the Middle East. And so they went over to the United States. Within 13 years, they had a very, very wicked plan to, kill a bunch of people, and they succeeded.
Completely crazy. All right, so, back to something you mentioned at the beginning when you were kind of giving a little bit of your story. You had mentioned that you had had a stroke, and that was kind of what gave you the idea to write the books. But you said your wife had basically said, why don't you go ahead and take the time to write all these books that you have talked about over the years. As far as what inspired you to eventually become an author, who do you think your biggest influences were?
Influences? I would say, I was a history, freak when I was in high school and first part of college, and because I really liked history, and if I could go back and have a conversation with a set of my heroes, I mean, I would have loved to be in the room with Winston Churchill or even a Pope or two, George Washington. I mean, those type of people that, they were average people, and you're going, how did they get to that plateau where everybody was looking up to them? I mean, which turn of their lives or careers was the one that made them, succeed high above anybody else? And, because usually these people are normal people, very common people, and somehow the burden of taking care of the rest of the people around them or protecting people around them, that's a pretty heavy, bit to pull onto. So, but, those are the type of people I wish I could have met.
Awesome. Okay, so next question. Out of the characters of the book, and without giving away too much detail, who's your favorite one? Every author usually has a favorite.
Well, I had two of them in there. The first one was a character by the name of Dick Edwards. And when I made characters in the book, I would visualize friends or people that used to be customers of mine, because it was easier for me to describe somebody in my mind that I had met in real life. And so Dick Edwards was actually a gentleman that was my boss for about 25 years with a couple different companies. His name was Roby Edwards. And we're still good friends today. He's retired out in Oceanside, California, and he liked the book except for the part where I killed him off. So I said, bitches, payback.
That's actually pretty awesome. When you mentioned that he was your boss, I was concerned of where the name Richard might have come into play, but yeah. Anyway. Yeah,
and then for Tim Lyons, his young fellow spy, that was me. Because I always felt like, I used to follow Roby around and learned a lot. He was my mentor, and he was the big brother I never had. So I fashioned Tim Lyons after myself. So the day that I had got done writing the section about Dick Edwards getting, wasted, my wife came in. It was at the end of the day, and since I've had the stroke, I'm not allowed to drink any hard liquor or beer anymore, and I used to love my beer. But the doctor said I could have as much wine as I could drink, as red wine. So she was bringing me in a glass of red wine at the end of the day, and she goes, "What's wrong?" I said, "What?" She said, "You got a tear in your eye." I said, "Yeah, I know." She said, "Well, what's wrong?" I said, "Well, I just killed off, one of my heroes in the book." And she goes, "Well, don't kill them all off." I said, "What do you mean?" She says, "You need a sequel." So because of her, there is a sequel to this first book called Enemy in Heartland. The sequel is called Revenge Unleashed.
So the sequel is because of the wife. That's good to know. What was she honestly afraid that you were going to kill them all off, or was she just giving you a hard time?
A little bit of both. Being a psychologist, she always loves to tease my mind after I had the stroke, and whatever I do is not good enough sometimes. If you've been married, you might know where I'm coming from on that. But no, I have to credit her for giving me the inspiration of doing that second book. And the second book has been edited last week. It was handed off to a proofreader. The cover's done, and hopefully in about another 7 or 8 days, when the proofreader gets done, that book will be ready for its cover. And then once it's formatted into the book or the ebook format, it should be out, so I'm hoping around mid-October. So, but from what my friends have read, they said, this book is perfect for a sequel, because everybody was saying, "Steve, are you going to write a sequel? You left us hanging." And I go, "Okay." So.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question, but you'd already told me there was going to be a sequel because, yeah, the end was just kind of like, huh, what? but yeah.
Yeah, hey, it's like, when people ask me, hey, I want to buy another book from you, it's kind of hard to say no. So, I got the inspiration. It took me a little longer to write the second book just because after I got done writing the first book, I had to do a lot of marketing on my own since I'm an independent author. I don't have a big publishing house behind me. So I've been spending like 2 hours a day, maybe 3 hours a day on social media trying to find talk show hosts such as you and to help me spread the word, so that, people are aware of the book, because you know how many books are published every day, new ones? Take a guess.
I would have to say that's probably a huge number, so I'm just going to throw one out there. I would say probably at least 2,000 to 3,000 a day.
5,000 a day.
See, and I thought I was aiming high.
It's not hard to get lost in numbers, but one of the nice things that's happened to me out here in Phoenix is there's a library called Desert Foothills Library up in Cave Creek. And they're voted the #1 library in the state of Arizona, and I've gone to some of their author functions that they've had up there, and they've been kind enough to hook me up with a couple of best-selling authors here in the Phoenix area, and they've taken me under their wing, and they've taught me some tricks. But one of the things that they told me right off the bat is, hey, you're going to be all right with your book sales in the first book, but if you really want to start cracking into the marketplace, you have to write a second and third book, because once they see there's 2 or 3 books by the same author, then they're going, this guy must be good, So, by hook or crook, I'm going to get that third book done here probably by next Easter, so I can have my 3 books. But it's a humbling experience becoming an author.
Yeah, the thing that always kind of sets that type of thing apart, I mean, whether it's being an author, an actor, talk show host, there's a lot of you that goes into the work that you do. And you actually kind of beat me to the punch by pointing out that one of the characters basically was kind of you. Because that was going to be one of the things that I had asked, is how much of you do you feel like you've left on these pages? It's a scary thing to put yourself out there. So it's really humbling when you start realizing that not only have you put yourself out there, but people actually like what it is that you're doing. So I want to commend you for that, because there are not that many people in the grand scheme of things that will basically just throw themselves out there and say, hey, world, here I am, and wait to see what happens.
Well, I'll tell you the thing that was, I shouldn't say frightening, but it was a little unnerving, and I didn't realize until I did it, was when I finished the book, I had to find an editor. And that was a crazy process in itself, because a couple of my friends who have written books of different types, different genre-wise, they said, hey, you have to go on this place called Thumbtack. It's a website to find editors. And so, I did this thing where, I wanted to have editors close to my, residence, because I didn't want to deal with somebody out in New York or, Chicago or L.A. So once I found a list of about 12 or 13 editors, I sent out 2 chapters to each one of these people saying, hey, I'm looking to learn an editor. What do you think? Are you interested? And some of the replies came back, oh, what a marvelous book. I'm going, oh, God, I don't need you. Or some of the people didn't want to do it because it was more than 200 pages, which mystified me, because I was willing to pay for them to do the editing job. And then some people, because of religious reasons, didn't want to edit the book. And then one day, this guy by the name of Ken called me up, and he goes, well, how accurate do you want this book? And I said, well, I'm kind of targeting, people in the military, the CIA, FBI, those type of people. People like those books like Clive Cussler or Tom Clancy, those type of, readers. And he said, well, you got a problem in your, book, And I said, where at? In the first chapter or what? And he goes, no, the list of characters. I go, what? He says, yeah. And I said, well, what's the problem? He says, well, you can't have a sergeant flying inside an Apache gunship. I go, really? How do you know that? And he said, well, I used to work for Boeing Helicopter and in the public relations, and you need to be a chief warrant officer or higher in rank to get inside of one of those things. So once he said that, I go, I think I'm going to have you be my author. My editor. And so he's been my editor for the first book and now the second book. But letting him go through and play with your baby, you know, the book, the manuscript and everything, you know, it was like, you know, why'd you change that, or why'd you do this? You know, it was really a humbling experience, but it was an educational process in the long run, because he taught me how to write, you know. And being a salesman, sometimes we're salesmen ramble on, so he taught me how to shorten up sentences and keep a time frame, consistent stuff like that. So it's been a learning curve that, you know, the only way you're going to get it is probably through some, you know, street smarts. I don't think they teach this in college.
Yeah, this stuff, all of it, I mean, writing or, you know, acting, all of that, it's all stuff that you basically learn by doing, and I think that's something that you just illustrated rather nicely there. I do find it interesting that you actually found an editor who said, yeah, by the way, the sergeant in the helicopter, yeah, that won't work. The only reason I know that is because I actually grew up in a military family. So I'm glad somebody caught it before the book went to publish. But at this point, we are gonna have to go ahead and take a really quick break. Anything else you want to throw out to folks real quick before we take a break?
No, go ahead and take a break. I'll be here when you get back.
All right. When we get back, we may actually change gears a little bit. I have some questions for you kind of outside the realm of the book, if that's okay with you, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Okay.
We will never fully understand what we've asked of our military service members, of their families or their children, asking them to deploy, patrol, stay on watch, on point, asking them to put themselves in harm's way, to endure it all. But we do understand that it's our turn, our duty, to bring them all the way home, to keep them secure, to have their backs for the rest of their lives. Wounded Warrior Project long-term support programs do whatever it takes to help our most severely ill or injured veterans live independently, at no cost, for life, so that they might stand at ease. Find out how you can help at findwwp.org.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
This is JD.
And this is Stacy.
Join us Tuesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, for Game On. Remember,
lock up the children and the old folks.
Game On, the home of living conservative conservatarians.
Where no one is safe and no one is spared, not even the hosts.
Oh, that was supposed to be a spin cycle. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. We love you anyway. Right round, baby.
Self-monitoring
right
Ebola radio strikes again.
Anyway.
Anybody see the host monkey? Where's the host monkey? Where's the host monkey? For God's sake, I need an antidote. Just do your rant. Let's pop out of the segment.
Find us on Twitter at JD and Stacy.
You're listening to K98Talk.com.
Calls, we got a pen and telephone to bypass all your laws. Political correctness will replace the Bill of Rights. Support religious freedom, bless you, pray to Jesus Christ. The press is it.
All right, folks, we're back. We're still live, and of course, still joined by Stephen Schwertley, author of Enemy in the Heartland. At this point, if it's all right with you, I want to go ahead and change gears for a little bit and kind of get your take on the Well, first of all, we never really had this conversation, so political affiliations, conservative, Democrat, Republican, who cares as long as they don't blow up the country?
Back in the old days, I grew up in the Midwest. I was born in Iowa and lived in Iowa and South Dakota and Minnesota, and we moved down here in Phoenix in '71. So, I grew up in a Democratic area and, then moved down here to a, Republican state. And, but I think over the years as I've gotten older, and I'm not sure if it's because of the age or what, but, I think the old Democratic Party, is no longer the same as it was, or I should say it's no longer the same as it is now. I think probably more of the Republicans out there are what the Democrats used to be 25, 30 years ago. It's kind of like nothing's really set in stone like it used to be. And I think it's because of social media and people tuning out. And like you said earlier, people don't like to get involved. They just tune into their own little world and, they won't vote or, my vote doesn't count, which I think is the biggest sin in the world because people died for your right to vote. And, and if you don't like the way the government's being run and you didn't vote, I don't think you should open your mouth. So I just try to think of what I would do, in certain situations when you vote on certain things or certain people, and kind of go with my gut. But, I'm not really a Tea Party person, but I don't mind crossing party lines when I see somebody I think is doing a better job. I mean, it's like a business to me. The government should be working for you, and, if you need to make an adjustment in employees, then either vote them out or let them stay.
Yeah, that's always kind of been my take. I mean, I've been a bit of an oddball in my family. I am one of the only conservatives in a family full of liberals. I actually used to get joked around with a lot in high school because, like you, I was in high school and college, big into social sciences, history classes, all that stuff. And I would start having conversations with my friends who knew my parents. And my running nickname through most of my sophomore year was Alex Keaton, only because he was like the only Republican in a house full of liberals. But I think the biggest thing that actually shaped it for me is something that I never really thought about it until I got older. One of the defining moments for me was sitting in, and this is going to make you realize that there is a bit of an age difference between the two of us. I was actually watching TV in my second grade class the day that President Reagan was shot. And to basically see all of that and see him basically doing what he did after and all of the things that he did, I think that was one of the biggest defining moments in my life, as even at that age. Because since then, Reagan has always been my kind of de facto hero when it comes to politics, because he was the guy that nobody expected to win. He was the guy that nobody wanted. Nobody thought he knew what he was doing. And if it wasn't for a lot of the policies that he eventually put in place, we wouldn't be where we are today. And of course, to a lot of liberals that I know, we'd probably be better off if it wasn't for him. But I mean, look at all the things that happened. And whether he was instrumental in it or even a secondary character to it, there were a lot of things that went right in the world while he was at the helm. So, I don't know. For me, that's always kind of been my defining moment of when I decided I was going to be a conservative and why, even before I really knew what it was.
Well, see, I think putting party names on people is antiquated because you picked a very good example, Reagan. And, he was a California liberal for many, many years. And then, as he, got through his presidency, he turned into the conservative hero. And I think the biggest thing that he tried to do was to do things that were right, regardless of, what party and whatever. And I think that's one of the reasons why that, Trump is doing so well right now, because people are tired of the establishment. They're tired of, keeping these incumbents in. And I think there's going to be a big house cleaning, in this next election coming up, just because people who will vote, are just tired of the job that the predecessors have done. And, if they could ever go for term limits, I think the three biggest things they need to do is this: term limits, and if you don't balance the budget, you don't get paid as a politician. A couple things like that, and I'll tell you what, I think you'd see a huge change in our government, both federal and state level.
You know, those two things are something that I've been shouting from the rooftops now for almost 4 years. Term limits, and actually set it up, and not only term limits, you know, but get it to the point where they have a total and complete established time frame where that's it. After that, they're done. And let it be maybe a maximum of 8 years for congressmen or senators, so they can do maybe 2 or 3 years in the or 2 or 3 terms in the House, if they want to, and then, or 4 terms if they stay in that long, or 1 term in the House, 1 as a senator. But not only that, but instead of doing the 4-year term for the presidency, I think it should be a single 6-year term with no option for repeat. Because the thing that I've noticed, especially over the last couple of cycles, is just like the second they get elected again, or for the first time, they're already campaigning for their next election. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. They're not focusing on actually fixing things because they're too worried about whether or not they're going to get elected again. We need to get rid of that, and that's one of the things that I've said from the beginning. The only other thing that I would take a step further is I honestly do not think that, since in reality these started as positions that were basically an honor and a service, I can understand them needing a salary nowadays because they do spend a lot more time at it than they used to, but I don't think they need retirement plans for life. And I don't think they need gold ticket health care anymore either. If Obamacare is supposed to be good enough for us, every single one of them should be on it too.
Well, I got a feeling Obamacare is going to take a huge crash after this next election. Just because, all the lies, like on your intro that I was listening to, you get the same doctor and this and this and this. Well, that all turned out to be false. So I got a real big feeling that, that might disappear. But, there was a talk show one time I was listening to, and remember Tip O'Neill?
Yes.
Back in the old days about Reagan's time.
Uh-huh.
He said they were interviewing him, and he said something really interesting. And this was just before he died. And he was talking about the difference of the Congress and Senate, when he first came to Washington versus, leaving Washington. And he said the biggest difference was when he first started out, all his, compadres, fellow senators of different parties, or congressmen, whatever it may be, after they got done with the work, they'd go down and have a beer at some local restaurant or pub, or, they'd hang around or go to parties. But now, as Washington got bigger and the price of real estate got, crazy, all these politicians that were coming to, Washington, D.C. in the later years were living farther and farther out, and they didn't get to mingle and sit there and rub elbows like they used to in the old days. And he said that was a huge disappointment to them, because he said those people never learned how to disagree but still be friends.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because one of the biggest quotes that I remember from Reagan, actually, I think it was even about Tip O'Neill, is that, from 8 to 5 we were adversaries. After 5 we'd go have a beer. And that's the thing that we don't seem to have in this country anymore when it comes to our politicians. And I'm not so sure that's a good thing, because I understand disagreeing and I understand fighting for your constituency, but there has to be a time when you're willing to put the animosity aside well enough to at least remember that we're all still supposed to be Americans. And we don't seem to do that anymore. And honestly, I think that's the one thing that has me the most concerned about Trump, is because it seems like most of his head of steam is coming off of how angry the American people are. And I'm not necessarily sure that's something we need to be focusing on.
Well, one of the things that, since I've been doing a lot of interviews this year for the book, politics has come up quite a bit. And a couple of the interviews, we start talking about, the media. And remember that James Bond movie with Pierce Brosnan, where the media mogul was trying to start a war?
Yeah.
It started over in China.
Mm-hmm.
You start thinking about, who owns the media and who directs the media. And, they seem to have all the same talking points. So that's why a lot of people just dial out. They don't watch, the mainstream TV or radio, or listen to the radio anymore. So you got the disenfranchisement from that. And then, like we were talking about earlier, nothing seems to get voted on, or, they can't even vote on a budget. I mean, who wants to give the government an open checkbook when they're broke? I mean, everything's broken, and I don't know what people are going to do to get out of that. But it's going to be it's going to be an interesting future for the people that come after us.
Yeah, honestly, that is actually, and we talked about this a little bit on the break, but that's one of the things that led me down the path that I'm on now, because I never in a million years thought I would be doing anything like this, but I just got tired of looking at TV screens and reading newspaper articles and realizing that it didn't seem like anybody was paying attention to anything anymore. And even if it's just me shouting from my little anthill, if I can at least maybe influence a handful of people here and there, maybe at least at the end of the day, I'll feel like at least I tried to do something. And like I told you on the break, this all started as a Facebook page, and now here we sit. I wouldn't say we're anywhere near the top, but we do have some really great shows on here, and we're adding listeners every day, and we have sponsors now. So, I mean, at some point, I hope to continue to make it grow. And this show itself is actually now on in several different markets. So it's just one of the things where I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is no matter how bad things seem like they are from your perspective, don't give up. Find a way to get involved, put down the remote, and see if you can find a way to make a difference. And that's kind of been the mantra for this show from day one, is it's time to get everybody off the couch, because we've gotten so wrapped up in the keeping up with the Joneses mentality that we're not paying attention to anything that's going on around us anymore. And it's a scary time to be doing that.
Well, when you talk to younger kids, and, my wife, is in the industry of, psychology, and she'll verify this. When you talk to the younger kids, they're plugged into their little, headphones every day, listening to, whatever radio station or whatever, and, they're texting each other on a phone. They're not making phone calls. They'd rather have you text. And when they get a text going, what did he mean by that? Is he breaking up with me? They don't get it. Hey, if you don't understand the text, make the phone call. But it's like there's a social disconnect now. People are like turning into machines. They don't know how to have communication between them face to face. It's like a lost art for them.
It reminds me, and I don't remember what show it was, but I remember there was I don't know, it wasn't the Twilight Zone, but it was one of those kind of out there shows about futuristic things, and I remember there was an episode where at some point everyone was disconnected from everybody else due to some sort of a virus or something, and the only way they talked to anybody anymore was over computer. I guess it didn't necessarily take a virus to get us there, because it seems like there are quite a growing number of folks that seem to want to do nothing but correspond over social media. And I don't always necessarily think that's a good thing either, as much as I use the platforms. And I do spend a large amount of time in front of a computer, sometimes more than I wish I did. I still try to disconnect from it at least once in a while. And I know people that just can't do it at all anymore, and that, I don't know. I'm a Star Trek fan, from way back. When I used to watch the original TV series in the dorm when I was back in college. But the later episodes, Jean-Luc Picard and those guys, when they started dealing with the Borg, I always thought that was pretty wild, because now when you look at kids nowadays, they're already plugged into their little headphones and stuff, and you're going, I bet you in about 50 years, all these kids, by the time they get to about 5 or 6, they're going to have a chip in their head. It's like the sci-fi movies, and, they're going to be and without even opening up their mouth. They're just going to be communicating by some chip in their head. So, because I remember last summer, my wife's got a niece that lives in Boulder, Colorado, and she came with her kids. She's going through a divorce, and her kids came out, and one was 7, one was 9, and the little boy was 2. And I just was dumbfounded that the mom pulled out an iPad, gave it to the 2-year-old. The 2-year-old knew how to turn the device on, started playing games, got bored with that, and started playing movies. And I'm going, the kid's only 2 years old. I mean, it's amazing how the young kids adapt to electronics. Yeah, And I've actually seen the same thing. We had a standing rule in my house for the longest time. You couldn't even get a cell phone until you were a teenager. Now, unfortunately, that rule doesn't help me because all my children are teenagers, so they all pretty much have cell phones because now they're all doing their own things, sports practices, college, all those fun things. But it was one of the things that we always tried to do was keep them from being plugged in all the time. And I guess at this point it's pretty much inevitable because every time I turn around, my almost 15-year-old is walking through the house with his earbud in, just jamming out. And I'm like, I remember back in the day when I had the Walkman, but I don't remember it always being on my head. I don't know. Maybe I really am just starting to get old. So maybe
you are old.
Maybe I just need to break out the hover round.
I'll tell you one thing that's kind of interesting because it's part of what I based the book off of, and it was a conversation I had with my grandfather, and it kind of fits into where we're talking about things on the show right now. But when I was a farm kid back in Iowa, my grandfather lost his leg in a farm accident, and so he was one of these guys out there working in the fields, walking up the bean fields, cutting out weeds in the soybeans with a peg leg on, basically. And one day we got done at one of the rounds of pulling beans, as we called it, and this conversation just came out of the blue, and I was probably 11 or 12 at the time, and I had no idea what he was talking about, but about 2 or 3 times a year, I remember this conversation like he just said it to me. He goes, I was born in the day that there wasn't an airplane. Now there's airplanes. There's this thing called computers. There was never computers, and now we landed on the moon. And like I said, we only had air balloons when I was a kid. And he says, I have no idea what you're going to see in your lifetime, but I bet you it hasn't been invented yet. And boy, you talk about words that were, never truer than those. And when I was in high school in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, went to Gorman High School there, and we had a math guy came in one time towards the end of the school year, and he gave a speech. And now this is, in the late 60s, so I'm aging myself. But he threw out some comments in terms that were just, outstanding. He says, when you guys get to about 40, which was a number of years ago, 85% of you people will be working in industries that haven't been invented yet. And this was like in 1969. And guess what? He was right. I mean, just to think about how forward-thinking some of these people are with their gadgets and, mathematics and stuff like that. But it's amazing, that, the evolution that I've seen, cell phones that, just about have everything that I need, a map, a tape measure, a dictionary. I mean, there's so many things on my cell phone. It's crazy, but who ever thought you had that much technology in your back pocket? I never did.
Yeah, it's amazing when you really stop and think about it, because the technology in our average cell phone nowadays is about 100 times more powerful than what they used to go to the moon.
I know. I saw something on that one time. I was just going, ugh, that's scary.
I know, right? All right, well, at this point, we are coming down to the end of the show. Why don't you go ahead and remind folks one more time, sir, who you are, about the book, where they can find it, and go ahead and plug anything else that you want to for the last couple minutes of the show.
All righty. Well, thank you, Rick. My name again is Steve Schwertley, and Schwertley is spelled Schwertley. I'm the author of a book called Enemy in the Heartland, and it's been out for about 7 or 8 months now. The sequel that will be out next month is going to be called Revenged Unleashed, and you'll be able to buy the books on Amazon.com, or you can buy the books off my website, StephenSchwertleyAuthor.com, and Stephen spelled with a S-T-E-P-H-E-N. So just remember Revenged Unleashed or Enemy in the Heartland. You'll have some really good hours of reading if you grab those books.
I can attest to the first one. I cannot wait to pick up the second one. And if you are wanting to try to get that caught up before the second one comes out, don't forget he did just put the ebook on sale, folks. Just saying, $3. That's a pretty good deal. All right, so that is going to do it for this particular episode of America Off the Rails. Sir, I would like to thank you again for coming on with me. It has been an absolute pleasure. You are welcome back anytime, especially when that next book comes out. We would love to have you on and talk about that as well. I do typically have an open chair available to any of the authors that we have on to come on anytime you want, so we can help you promote your stuff. So just let me know, and we will get something worked out. But at this point, we are going to have to get out of here because we've got Red Nation Rising Radio coming up next right after this. So this is, of course, Rick Robinson. So I will be back with you live tomorrow night. We will actually be doing just a little bit of a special event for 9/11. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and jump off here so we can make room for the next show. You guys, I'll be back with you tomorrow night.
Screw you guys. I'm going home. Later.
Game over, man. It's game over.